Hello everyone, thanks for joining us here for This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson, and earlier this week I had the chance to travel to Coralville, Iowa to be a part of the Farm Futures Business Summit. It was a big weather week in Iowa with about 12 inches of snow reported just before the conference, but in spite of that inclement weather, seats were full. Farmers had gathered from around the Corn Belt to talk about many issues impacting the business of agriculture, labor, farm transitions, the markets, and we talked quite a bit about weather. Eric SNODGRASS, a meteorologist with Nutrien and their chief science fellow, spoke first about the ongoing problems with drought through the Brazilian growing season.
3 months of near record dryness. In fact, in some spots it was the driest it's been since World War II. And then the beginning of January brought in rain. In some places picked up 7 to 8 inches of rain. Even down in Argentina, some spots picked up over a foot of rain. So we have questions like, did that really help out much of the crop? Early planted, I don't think so. It'd already been burned up, it'd been too dry. Anything planted late probably got some benefit from it. But overall, really wet conditions to start off a new year. How long does it last? Those are some of the big questions we've got.
When we think about really wet conditions in Brazil, Eric, it may be different from wet conditions here in America. What does it look like right now in Brazil and in parts of Argentina with this rainfall? How much are we talking?
Yeah, so I think it's fun to compare it to where we are now. So if it was midsummer here and you got an inch a week, we'd be talking about bin busting crop. You got an inch a week down in parts of Brazil, that's drought. They need 2, 3, 4 inches of rain a week in late December through most of January. So to see them get in a 10 to 12 day stretch, some places over 8 inches, that is a little bit more than the climatological average. And that's kind of funny to say, because if I put down 8 inches of rain out here, we'd be talking about, Genesis chapter 7 flooding, right? So this is a different setup down there. So have the rains come through and stop the bleeding? I think they have in the northern growing areas. Southern Brazil had plenty of rain early, which means they're probably looking a little bit better. At least we can see that from satellite. But overall, that crop's still compromised in the north.
Now, you mentioned in the north, Eric. Brazil, of course, big country. I struggle sometimes to comprehend the size. Has the damage been uniform across the country, or is it concentrated in one region or another?
I'd say it's concentrated most in the center-west region and the northeast region. The central area, like Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, those areas are probably doing okay. Southern Brazil had some flooding problems earlier, like Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina. But you talk about big growing areas. I mean, what I just listed off to you, combine all those states, that's like 2 corn belts worth of area. It's massive down there. And as a result, when I say that these north and central growing areas have been compromised, we're talking about several states in the U.S. worth of damage probably.
All right, Eric, looking out to the long term, now we've got this moisture falling. As you consult your forecasts, how does it look for the rest of the growing season there in Brazil?
Right, so to finish out the soybeans, actually the worst case scenario I think would be to stay too wet. Because now you have this late planted crop that's going to stay green longer, which means it's going to be delayed in harvest. Or if you have beans that have been compromised by heat and drought stress, if you dump a bunch of rain on them, it's like us getting heavy rains in October. We don't want that. We want to harvest the crop, which could push the whole crop production calendar around quite a bit, which means safrinha could go in late, which means if it goes in late, what if El Nino comes in and makes April dry? Now we've got problems with that crop as well.
Let's get into that a little bit, because of course Brazil, that soybean crop is starting to get harvested right now. That'll proceed for a little while. Then that second corn crop goes in the ground, that safrinha crop. How big of a crop are we expecting so far based on the meteorological setup?
Well, I think it'll be a combination of meteorology, and then it's going to be a combination of that and what's intended planted acres. We've heard a lot of rumblings that it's not going to be as big of a crop as what they could have put in. So question will be, does it go in fast? They needed to be done by the end of February so that the crop is maturing in late March, early April, and then when the monsoon shuts off, it'll be okay. If anything pushes that calendar back, we're going to struggle with having enough moisture on that crop during grain fill. So which means I think there's still going to be a market story there to be told as we go through the next 4 to 6 months.
Because when would that monsoon end typically in a Brazilian year?
Normally mid to late April is when it really begins to slow down, and then by May we're talking about getting into their winter dry season. So they need it to be, they need it to hang around longer than normal this year given some of the delays. And when it gets dry down there, they sometimes don't get moisture for 3 months in June, July, August, and early September. So like none at all. So they need to see the monsoon lasting longer than normal.
Yes, it sounds like those Brazilian growers will need to be watching the sky for a while longer. Thanks to Eric SNODGRASS, the Senior Science Fellow there with Nutrien.